could you please share the LMS site where can I find? So the LMS link which I have will not work for you. So you will get a link from Edureka only. So the emails which you are getting when you signed up, there would be an email which will provide you the link for it. Otherwise, you have to raise a ticket with Edureka, go to the Edureka site and request for the link for it. All right, so let's see what topics we covered in the yesterday session. So we have seen front-end web development. We have seen the difference between back-end and front-end, architecture, understood what type of applications we are building. We are going to work with single-page application with Angular. What is Angular? We have seen that, how TypeScript works with Angular. We have seen that the controller or the MVC pattern which we have, and installed Angular project. Then this are the steps, like we need to use Visual Studio Code, we need to use Node.js and Angular CLI to set up the project for us. For Node.js, we have to install it. We run the commands node-v to understand which version of Node.js is installed on our system. The current version of Angular requires minimum Node 14. Earlier, it was actually Node 12. So if you have an older version of Node.js, please upgrade that. We need to install Visual Studio Code. That's the editor of choice when we are working with Angular. And then we've seen how to create a project with Angular CLI. There is a steps of creating a project without Angular CLI, but I would not recommend using that because creating the files and updating the modules and everything is a quite lengthy process. So just directly start working with Angular CLI for the project creation. Otherwise, if you are doing it manually, you have to configure the build packages, how the Angular code should be built, how the Angular code will compile the TypeScript code. And that's a quite lengthy process. You won't like to go into that detail when you're starting a new project. So that's the preferred thing, that use Angular CLI. Even for other solutions, like if you have worked with React.js, React.js has create React app, which allows us to create a React application. So that's the same thing. So we prefer to use a CLI, which creates the project for us, and we just focus on developing the code on it. So by using Angular CLI, we create the project. We create the project by using the ng new command. We provide the name for it and the prefix. So I've shown you where is the prefix used. Prefix is used for the selector. Any component which you're going to create, it will have a selector with it, and the selector name will have that prefix added to it. So we started the project by running the command which was ng-serve or npm start. That gave us this kind of a screen, and we updated the screen, the template for that, that is the app component.html. We updated the content for that and added our header and footer component in it. And the header and footer components were created using the ng generate component command for creating those two components. And then the other few commands which are available in Angular CLI are ng-new, ng-doc, generate, add, test, e2e. So e2e command has been deprecated from Angular. That is not available now. It was for running end-to-end test cases, but this course content is actually designed for Angular 12, but in Angular 13 and moving ahead, the e2e command was deleted. So it's now not available in Angular. Okay. Then we have commands for Angular help, Angular start, update, build, version, and link. So I will cover these commands today, that what are the use cases of these commands, and we'll see them in a demo. Okay, so once our code setup was done, so we had walkthrough of the files, and I will just walk through now what are the building blocks of Angular project. So this was something which we haven't covered in the yesterday session. So now we're going to start this. So any Angular project which you're building, it will have few predefined building blocks in it. So we call them as building blocks of Angular. So first is your module. In Angular, anything which you're building, it will be part of some module, and it has to be a module, and a module will have different features implemented into it. So we can say a module is a kind of a namespace or a group which will have smaller features implemented into it. So what is a module now? In our Angular application, the by default created setup which we have for the Angular application, it has a module called as app. So that defines that we are creating an Angular application and that app module will have other modules also included in it. So if you see the yesterday's code and go to app module, on the top there are few imports done for browser module, and related to Angular there will be few modules in it. So I will show you the code for it. Give me a second, let me open Visual Studio Code, and here it is. All right, so you can see over here, when you create any module, so in our case, this is the app module which we have from the yesterday's code, and it has the predefined module also included in it. So we have the browser module, app routing module, which is implemented for routing. So a module is a group which will have multiple features included into it, and these features are called as components, directives, services, pipes, which are other building blocks of Angular. So it's a kind of a wrapper for these features. And the benefit of a module is it allows you to share these features with other Angular projects too. So the concept is whenever we are building something, we should try to build features into smaller chunks or smaller groups so that they can be also loaded. We can do lazy loading for them. We can share them with other projects, and it's easy to manage those also. So by default, Angular application comes with one module, but later on you can add modules as required. Now, once a module is defined, then you have components. The components are the second building block. So these are for creating any feature which you have in your application. So in the yesterday session, I've showed you that any application which you're creating will have some kind of a layout or structure has to be defined for it. So over here, I will show the draw.io file. So this is the draw.io file which I showed you earlier in the yesterday session, that any part of your application which you're building, it has to be a component. So a component can be even a small text on the screen, or it can be a whole feature which is implemented on your screen. So over here, each colored block is a type of a component. So I have a component for a header, a component for navigation, a component for a carousel or a gallery, a component for showing different articles on my application. So this is this is for kind of a news application which shows you news, and then a component for showing the footer. So we'll create each part of our application as a component, right? So that's one thing. Now, components are also going to have the templates with them. So in Angular, the only thing which has template is the component. Other things, other building blocks which you're going to work with, they will not have any template with them. So directives, pipes, services, they do not have templates. They only work with the logic which you have defined in them. So we'll define some classes, we'll write some logic in them, but they will not work with templates. So only components will have access to writing HTML templates. Okay. Then every building block which you're building, like we have modules, components, directives, services, all of these building blocks will have some metadata. So now what is this metadata? So metadata actually is any data which is used for configuring a decorator. So I have this ng model over here. In this ng model, this part over here is my metadata. So this metadata can be for different scenarios. Like, because it's an ng model, so I have to define the metadata, that what are the declarations for this module, what are the imports I have to do for this module, and how to start the component. If you go to your components will also have some metadata. So components have a decorator for component, and this is the metadata for your component. So when you have any kind of a decorator, it may accept some kind of metadata. There is no standard that every metadata will be same. Different types of scenarios will, or different types of decorators will implement different metadata requirements, and we'll see them once we start working with other scenarios where different decorators are used. We'll use some different metadata for them. So, but yeah, any value which you're passing to the decorator, that is a metadata. Okay, so this value can be any type. It can be an object, or a string or a Boolean value. So this metadata is used for configuring the decorator. So it's a parameter which tells the decorator that what you have to do. Okay, so it's a parameter which you're passing to it. Okay, so next is directives. So directives are special types of instructions which we give to Angular. Now, these directives are very similar to components. So if I show you the code of how to write a directive, you will say, no, this is also a code for a component. Yes, it looks like a component, but the main difference between a directive in and a component is the directives will not have template with them. They work with the elements on which they are assigned on. We haven't covered directives now, or till in the yesterday session also, we haven't covered any directives. We'll cover them in the next session, in the next week. So for today, I will just use some directives, but how to create directives is something which we have planned for the next week. But yeah, directives are instructions, special instructions which we give to the Angular code that what has to be implemented. So we'll cover that in the next session, how to create them, but I will show you how to use them in the today's session. Next is data binding. So we'll see data binding. So data binding is again a syntax which we write for getting values from the TS code. So over here, when we have Angular component, it has the TS file. The TS file over here is your model, and the template file is your view. Okay, and to connect them, we use the VM. Now, VM means any data which has been shared between the template and the view. And that data is shared based on this class. So this class will have your business logic, and any public property which you're creating in it, that will be also accessible to the template. So if I create a property over here, like say name equal to ABC, so this by default gets created as public, or I can even define that it is going to be a public property like this. And now this will be available in my template. So over here, I can write a code like this. I can say I want to get the value of name and use it over here. If I convert this to private, if I say this is a private property, this will not be available in my code. So over here, now I can see the name property is not available. So any public property which you are creating in your class, that is going to be available in your template file. And that's your VM part, or the link between connecting the logic and the view, or the model and the view. Okay. Now, how to establish this connection is done through creating these curly braces. So over here, we're going to write a pair of curly braces opening and closing. And in this, we can write the name of any property. So here in this code, in the TS file, in the component class, you will see there is a ng on in it. This is a public method right now, and I can see this public method also here. If this was a private method, this will not be shown over here. So anything which is public is going to be available over here. Okay, then we have services. So services are used for creating models, same as a TS file where you create the data model. But TS file for a component is used for something which is directly related to the component, not available across your application. So anything which you want to make reusable across your application, you define that in a service. So that service is also going to create a model for you. It can have any global functions. It can have any data which may be required across your whole application, and you can share with different components this data in that case. Okay, so services are also classes which use a decorator which is called as injectable. So we haven't created any service yet, and we'll see how to create a service in the later part of the session. Then we have dependency injection. Now, dependency injection is a special principle which is implemented in Angular. So you may not see this kind of a thing happening in your traditional JavaScript code or any other web framework. But this is a special feature. What it does is it allows you to load injectable code into your components directives, or any other service. So what is this special injectable code? So Angular by default provides you a lot of features which are inbuilt into it. And if you want to use them, you have to inject them into your component. So it's not going to make everything available directly to you. All the things like which are available are hidden somewhere, and you have to inject them into your component to tell that, okay, I need that specific thing to work in my component. So we use services for that, and those services needs to be injected into our components, directives, or other services. So services can be also injected into other services. And how do we do that is we need to first import that thing. So I'll give you an example over here. Let's say I want to know that which page I am on right now, or the details about my um, page. So here I will say I want to use the router, the Angular routing, and from this I want to know which route I am on. So Angular provides you this feature. It provides you a feature to let you know that which page you are on right now. But if I import this over here, it will not work now. It's not going to be working directly. It's going to work when I tell my component that you have a dependency on it. Okay. And we do this by saying I have a dependency on this code by writing a import like this. Okay, so this is a syntax for dependency injection. I will cover that in detail. Just a brief that there is a concept of dependency injection. If you don't understand this right now, don't worry. I will be covering this in detail later on. So it's just a concept I'm covering in brief over here, that we have support for dependency injection for different features which we want to use in our components, directives, or services. Okay, so we can even skip this right now. Don't do any kind of a demo for this. We'll cover this in the later part. Okay, so these are the things which every developer should be familiar with to work with Angular. Okay, so we have seen what files are in Angular, so that's good in the yesterday session, and that wraps up the first module of Angular. Any questions on it? Okay, so I got a question. Are there any famous websites which are built on Angular? Yes, even the Edureka site is also built on Angular. So if you go to this inspect element, you will see it's also using Angular over here. So it's using Angular 4.4.6. So it's a quite old uh, version of Angular. Even like Gmail, or there are lots of banks which are using Angular. So there are lots of applications. Okay, so I got a question. Can you please repeat data binding? I will repeat data binding. I actually want to start data binding in this example now. So I'll show you a demo code, how data binding works, and we'll actually see a proper demo for it. So what is the difference between Angular and Angular.js? We didn't cover that. Okay, so there are two things, like two versions of Angular which are in the market. Angular.js is roughly, I would say, 8 to 9 years old, and Angular.js was the first release of Angular. So if you go to this site, which is just search for Angular.js, this will take you to angularjs.org. So angularjs.org, this is the Angular version, which is Angular 1. Okay, this was the first cut of Angular, and any website which is built on Angular 1 or 1.x, like it can be 1.7, 1.8, that is called as Angular.js. So this had a lot of issues with data binding. There were some performance issues which were very problematic for users. And what Angular team did is they revamped the complete code for Angular, and they started with Angular 2. So anything which is from Angular version 2 and above. Like right now, the Angular version is 14. So anything from Angular 2 to Angular 14 is called as Angular. So that's why that's the two differences. Angular 1 is the Angular JS code. It's a complete different code base, complete different way of working with the code. And anything which is more than Angular 2 or Angular 2 and plus, that is Angular, we call it as. So it's very hard that you will find some projects still using Angular 1.x, and if they are using it will be a completely different kind of a code to work with. It's pretty old, and even the support for that has been removed like in January. So 5 months back, they deprecated the support for it, but it has a complete different setup. See, the last version was 1.8 for this. These are the versions which are available for Angular 1. Yes, AngularJS was also a framework. It was a complete framework in this case, but it had a lot of different kind of a structuring, how the code works, and it's pretty different. So even if you learn Angular now, you may not be very familiar with how AngularJS works. But that's not a problem because nobody in these days use AngularJS. It's very rare that somebody will be using or creating a project on AngularJS. It's yeah. Okay, so is Angular website more protective and secure? It depends on how the backend is implemented. Angular has some security rules, but the security is actually more of a backend thing, that how they are managing the connections and how they are managing the security of the application. So Angular tries to be secure by using some XSS practices, but uh, I would prefer to say that it's more of a responsibility of a backend developer to make the code base secure. Okay, so does Angular works with XML as well or JSON only? So Angular by default, what I know is it doesn't works with XML. You have to write some adapters for it, but there are open source adapters which are available which can take XML data and directly convert that into a JSON format. At the end, any kind of a data which you're using, XML or JSON, you need a JavaScript object. So you can download any XML adapter which can convert that data into a JavaScript object. In case of JSON, JSON is natively supported into JavaScript, so that's why it's much more easier to work with JSON. What is more popular, Angular or React? Both of them are popular depending on what kind of company you're working with. A lot of companies prefer to work with React because they prefer that they write the code which is more open, free, like they can adapt different uh, kind of a code style according to their preferences. So they will use React. React has lots of other free packages, but companies who are looking towards implementing enterprise level solutions or big complex applications, they will prefer to use Angular. So most of the time you will see huge companies uh, will be using Angular. Like most of the banks are using Angular, enterprise companies are using Angular for their applications. So I got a question, sir. I'm interested in React.js, so can I skip Angular? So it's up to you what kind of a code you are interested in. Like you want to work with Angular or React, depends on your, they have their complete different coding practices also. But yeah, somewhere if you learn Angular, you can easily work with React, or if you learn React, you can easily understand how Angular also works. Okay, so next question is Angular modules which we used are secured, such as Toaster. Not sure what does this mean. Okay, so that wraps up our first module. Let's start with our second module. We'll cover the questions later on then. So we'll open the second module. And in this, we are going to do a codes hands-on of how the application gets set up. So we have seen how the Angular application starts. We have seen how the Angular application bootstraps also, working with different modules, components, and creating a component through the Angular CLI, and using the Bootstrap code is something which we have to learn. Okay, so you're going to learn these concepts. Okay, so I got a question. So Angular is different from Vue and React. Yes, Angular is different from Vue and React. Vue has a different way of writing the code, Angular has different way, and React has different way of writing the code. But if you learn the concepts of how these components and data management works, you can easily adapt to different frameworks. All right, so let's start with our application. So we already seen these example code in the yesterday session, that what was the code base. These things are already covered, like what are the components, how the application starts, and all of these things. So you can go through the slides later on. I will start with implementing some code for you and show you different scenarios which we can cover. So today we are going to create a news application. So yesterday we created an application called as Edurica News. We're going to add some different components into it. So this is how we thought of dividing the application. So we need to create a header component, a navigation component, a carousel, and few articles, and the footer. So this is what we have to build. Okay, so I got a question. You need to submit the assignment. So till now you don't have any assignments to submit. You will be submitting the assignment today. Like you will get the assignment today, and I will show you how to submit the assignment also. So don't worry about that. All right. So before we continue with creating components, do you have any questions? Any other questions? Okay. So haven't got any questions. So now don't just start writing the code. First, see what I am doing, and then start implementing the code. I will give you time, have plenty of time for this. And okay. So the first thing is we need to create the component. So what components do we need? We need 5 components in it, or actually 6 components in it. First would be the header component. So we'll call this as header over here. Then we need the navigation component. Okay. Then we need this gallery. So we'll add it over here, where I want to show some images. Then we need to create these articles, these 4 boxes, which we need to show the articles. Okay. And then the last would be the footer component. So we'll create them one by one and add different things into it. So first thing is the header component. Now, in the yesterday session, I already have created the header component. We ran the command which was ng generate component, and then we wrote the components folder. In the components folder, I want to create the header component. So if you haven't created it, I can give you the code for it. It's called as ng generate component. And in the components folder, I want to create the header component. So this is the whole command for it. Now, typing this command is quite lengthy. I have to write ng generate component, and the components folder, I want to create a header component. So there is a shortcut to it. So what you can do is you can say ng g c. Ng means ng command, g means generate, and c means component. And then you can write components slash the name of the component which you want to implement. So we already have the header and footer. We need the gallery component and the articles component and the footer component. and the navigation component. So navigation is left. So we'll create the navigation components. We'll write ng gc components and write navigation. This will create the navigation component for us. Here it is. Then we need the gallery. So we'll write gallery, and gallery is created. And then we also need the articles, the 4 articles which we have. So for them, I will only create one component, and I will place that as a loop. I will create iteration so that it repeats that single component 4 times. I don't have to create 4 different components for each article. One component is enough for it. So we'll create a component over here. We'll call it as article callout. Okay, so callout means just a box which will show some information for it. Okay, so we'll write ngc and article callout. So these are the commands which are used for creating these components. So you should also create these 3 components. So finally, if you create all the components, this will be your code over here. So it should have article callout, footer, gallery, header, and navigation. So this should be all over here. Okay. Okay, so if you're running Visual Studio Code terminal on a Windows machine, the command may not work. So for you who is using a Windows machine, please directly use the command prompt or the Node.js command prompt for running these commands. The login and the register component will create them later, not for right now. We'll just focus on the base structure right now. So question, Chetna, in editor, how are you getting the below window section? So you have to press Control backtick. So this is the keystroke for it. Control plus the backtick key. So if you press this, you will get this option, or you can go to the menu. On the menu, you can say new terminal. But if you're using a Windows machine, I would prefer you use the Node.js command prompt for running the commands. The ng command may not work over here directly. It will give you errors for permissions, and it's not a good experience. Like you have to run a lot of commands to just allow the permissions for it, and those also gets reset when you open a new terminal. So it's better to use the Node.js command prompt directly. Okay, so have you created the components? Great. All right, so let's set them up. So what we need to do is these all components are going to be, so first we need the header. Great, we have the header. Then I need the component which is the navigation component. So I will pick navigation. Okay, and then I need the gallery. So I'll put the gallery component over here. And then we need to show the articles. Okay, like this. So this is how your components are going to be added. Poonam, what is the error you're getting? So the command which you're running is actually wrong. I've sent you the command in the chat. So you're running the command ng generate components, but it is ng generate component. So just correct the typo in it. It will start working. Poonam? Okay, so please fix that typo. It will start working. Great. All right. So in our app component, what I did is I just structured these components that how I want these to load in my application. So I want the header, then the navigation, gallery, article callout, and footer. So this way we can create a structure of multiple components in it. Right. So now what I need to do is I will just run this application and see if this works. So we'll run the command ng-serve or npm start. So if ng-serve doesn't work, then run npm start. It should start here. So okay, so I've sent you the commands to start this application. So my application is started. We'll go to my browser in Chrome. I will open localhost 4200 and I can see the components are added over here. So I have header, navigation, gallery, and article callout. So footer is not available. Why? Because the footer has no content in the template. I'll just save it again. I'll just undo this code. And now I can see it also shows footer works. Okay. So this way our components gets loaded, but it's very basic. We don't have the right structure for it. Senthil, you're running the wrong command. I've sent in the chat. Please check the chat. It's ng-gc components folder and the name of the component. You're running ng only. So you're running n space g space c. That's the wrong command. So please see the commands which I'm sending in the chat. Right. So now the thing is, this setup is very basic. It's not really that great. I need to also stylize this. I need to use some kind of a design system to stylize these components so they look a little better. So first thing, as a front-end developer, we learn about Bootstrap. So Bootstrap is a free design system. So it depends on what company you're working with. Different companies have different preferences for design system, but as a standard, everybody loves to use Bootstrap for designing their projects. So we'll be using Bootstrap to design the CSS and the structuring for our project. So how do I add support for Bootstrap? Now, there are two things when we're working with Bootstrap. Bootstrap is going to provide you the CSS and some interactive components. So if you go to documentation over here in Bootstrap, there is going to be a section over here for components. So these are interactive components which are implemented over here. Okay, you can click on them. You can see like this is accordion, there is a badge component. These are all interactive components, like a carousel, which will allow you to show different slides like this, like the gallery which you want. But these interactive components are not supported in Angular because these are designed in pure JavaScript, and how Angular processes the JavaScript code and the UI, these will not work. So even if I add the JavaScript files for them, they will not work in my application. So I need a solution which is specific to Angular, which will have these same interactivities, but work with Angular code base. So for this, we need to use a package which is called as, it's an npm package. We call it as ng bootstrap. So this is a setup of Bootstrap. It's again an open source package. It's a setup of Bootstrap which allows you to interact or add all the interactive components in an Angular application. So see, you will find over here also, you have the accordion, you have the carousel. Okay, all of these are built in Angular specific code, and these will be special components which can be used in your application. Now, they are not by default installed in your application. You have to install them in your application. So what we do is, Angular has a setup of Angular CLI has a setup which is called as ng add. So there are some specific packages which can be directly installed in our Angular project, and the Angular CLI will modify all the requirements or all the settings for you. So what you have to do is you have to run the command ng add and say, I want to add the support for ng bootstrap in it. Okay. So this is written over here. So you can take this command, go to your terminal. In this case, first of all, stop your server. Do not keep that running, because when you are installing or adding these kind of special packages, you need to restart your application. So I've stopped my server. I will run the command ng add and add support for ng bootstrap. So this will automatically configure the whole environment to work with Bootstrap. So now we're here. It says this package will be installed. You want to install this? Yes. Okay, so all right. So the ng bootstrap has a dependency which is defined over here, that it will not work with Angular 14. Right now we are using Angular 14, so the installation will not work. Okay, so what we can do is we can directly install the packages for it. So they might not have updated, because Angular 14 was released only like 2 weeks back. So they haven't updated the ng bootstrap package to work with it. So what we can do is we can say npm install. So I will tell Node.js package manager to install this package, and that is called as ng bootstrap. So how do we add that? We'll install this package. Okay, so I think it will not even install it, because internally it has a check for it. All right, so we'll have to wait for this to work. This doesn't get supported. We'll look for a different solution right now. So what we need to do is, for today's session, we kind of don't need this to work. If it is not working, it's fine. One thing I need to do is I need to still support Bootstrap CSS. So I was installing Angular Bootstrap for adding support for components, but I also need to add the CSS support for Bootstrap in my project. So Bootstrap CSS support is pretty simple. What you need to do is you will install this package, npm install Bootstrap. So this is only done for installing the support for the code in your project. Okay, so install this package. Now what this does is it downloads the CSS files which is provided by Bootstrap. Okay. Right. Now, if you go to the node modules, yesterday I told you don't change anything into the node modules, but we still can go to it. And in our node modules folder, you will find Bootstrap CSS has been downloaded. So the package has been downloaded over here, and you have to go to the dist folder. In the dist folder, you will find the CSS file for it. So in this, we have this file which is called as bootstrap.min.css. So this is the CSS code for running Bootstrap in a web application. Okay. So what you need to do is you have to install the Bootstrap package, which the command I have already sent you. That will download the Bootstrap project on your system, like a package on your system. You have to copy the related path for it. So you can right click and say copy related path. And then go to Angular JSON file. In the Angular JSON file, scroll down, you will find a section for styles on line number 25 and 27. In this section, In this section, we'll add this line over here. So what I need to do is I need to add support for Bootstrap min in my Angular project. So this will be only for adding the CSS code in my project. Okay, so just make this change. Once you install Bootstrap, you can just update the style section in your Angular JSON with this one, which I have on my screen. So this will add the support for Bootstrap in your project. Okay, so this will be for adding the styling which we need using Bootstrap. So just make this change, then we'll continue. The change which you have to do is you have to run the command which I've given you, npm install bootstrap. Once that is done, go to Angular JSON file. In the Angular JSON file, line number 25, you'll find a style section. So you have to replace the style section which I have sent you in the chat. So replace that with the one which I've sent you. So Srinivas, yes, when you are running commands through the terminal in Visual Studio, it requires additional privileges which may not be available on your system. I think you're using a Windows machine, so that will be a problem. Uh, Setting up these privileges takes some time, and they're also only temporary. So that's why I would recommend use the command prompt directly. Do not use this terminal over here. Okay, Senthil, the command which you're running is not in the same Angular project. So please be inside the Angular project and then run the command. The command which you're sending, see, the command which you're sending over here, it says you're running the command in users/Senthil. But this is not your Angular project. You have to go inside the Angular project and then run the command. It also clearly says over here that the command is not available when running the Angular CLI outside of the workspace. Means you're running the code, this command outside of Angular project. First, navigate to the Angular project folder and then run the command in it. All right, so guys, have you made the change for adding support for Bootstrap? Senthil, we covered that yesterday, so you have to run cd and write the name of the project folder. Okay, so let's continue. So we have the project setup done. Now, just start the project over here. So I can say npm start, and this will work. Refresh it, and you can see the fonts have changed over here. The styling has a little bit changed because now we have the support for Bootstrap. So if I inspect this, I will see that the styling will also be coming from the Bootstrap CSS. See over here, reboot.css. That's the complete CSS code coming from Bootstrap. So that's now perfectly working. We can add more designs into it or create the layouting based on Bootstrap. So we'll first cover the basics of setting up the layout. So first thing is, in Bootstrap, we use a component, or sorry, a class which is called as container. So the container class is used for setting up the container size, that how big your container or the screen should be when this application, like how big the website should be on your screen. So we'll write a class over, we'll create a div over here or a main container section. So we'll say main, and we'll say this is going to be a container class. So this container class comes from Bootstrap. If you are not familiar with Bootstrap, you can go to the Bootstrap site and just understand how the basics of Bootstrap work by looking at these container classes. Okay, so you can check out these from here. This will give you a better understanding than me that how this works. Okay, so I'm creating a container that will be, I'm using the container class. So these are the sizes of the container class. So on a screen, on a desktop, the container will be 1140 pixels in width and it will be center aligned. Okay, perfect. Now each container will have rows in it. So we'll create a row by adding a div tag, and this row means one section on the screen. So over here in this row, uh, the row will be one row, like it's a horizontal division of the screen. Now in the row, you have to create columns which will divide the given area into separate column areas. So Bootstrap follows 12 columns in layout. So you can check the layouting over here. So when I say 12 columns, so the screen area which you have for the container, that will be divided into 12 equal columns, and you can utilize them by different configurations. Over here, you can see it shows a text one of three columns because Bootstrap divides the column, the available screen into 12 sections. So this must be column 4, and column 4. So that equally divides the section into 3 different areas. So in our case, when I'm putting the header, I want it to be from the whole available screen, like available width of the container. So I can write div class call 12 because I want to get the complete width which is available on the container. So I'll write call 12, and in this I will write the Edureka header like this. Okay, so that's the first section. Then I also need to create a space for the navigation. So I will put call 12 and add the navigation in it like this. Then we need to show the gallery. So again, we'll put another call 12 and put gallery in it. Now we need to show the callouts, the articles which we have, the 4 articles. Now I will add one over here, but I will change the width of this area. Like I can say now, because I want to show 4, so 4 columns. So what is 12 divide by 4? So that's equal to 3. So I want to use it as 3 columns because I have already 12 columns, but I want to use that as a 4 column layout. So I will divide 12 by 4. That tells me that I have to create each single column as 3 and have to use that. So it will allow me to create 4 different sections. Okay, so that's the calculation which we have to do over here. So we'll comment this calculation like this. And now I can repeat this 4 times over here. And at the last, we also need to create the footer. So I write another row and add the footer in it. Okay, so I got a question. Not understand why did we divide meaning of call 12. So I'll show you over here on the screen first. See, when you have this layout, with Bootstrap, what Bootstrap does is it divides your screen into a section. So now, because I'm using a desktop, I'm using my laptop over here. My laptop's available width is being divided into smaller sections. So when I use the container class tells me that I can only use 1320 pixels of space on my screen. So it creates this section. Okay. This section, which is in red color. Now this section is logically divided into 12 areas. So you have 12 areas on the screen. Okay. So that is example over here. So you can see over here that that container is divided into 12 areas. Now, from those 12 areas, I want to create one single column which consumes 3 parts of it or 4 parts of that 12 sections. So over here you can see this message, one of 3 columns. That means I'm creating one column which consumes 3 parts of that particular container area. So that's been added over here. Oh, sorry, 4 of that. So this way you can see it uses these column classes to add those structures. So there are different ways you can structure these columns. So you have to actually go through uh, how Bootstrap structuring works. So I can just give you a basic idea of it, but that's something which you have to learn by yourself, that how Bootstrap grid and those are going to work. That is not the part of the course content. I have given you the links for it. Please go through it, how Bootstrap works. Okay, so I got a question why we use the main in the starting of the code. So main is just a HTML element to tell that it is the starting of your code structure. You can name it to div or anything else, but I would prefer to use the main element. Yeah, so every time when you have a container or a row, any row will be divided into 12 sections. So it can be any place, but every row will be divided into 12 sections. Okay, so once you run this code, it will create a structure like this, where you have header, footer, everything all structured over here, and you have 4 columns for the callouts. Now let's go to the header component and add some styling to it or structuring to it, what information I want to add in it. So in the header component, based on my drawing, I want to add the application name. So what is the name of my application? So we add that over here in a h1 tag. The name of the application is Eureka News. Okay, so that's hard coding the value. So if I write Eureka News over here, this is a hard coded value which is over here and shows up like this. Okay, works perfectly, but I don't want this value to be hard coded in my HTML. I want this to come from my model. So what we do is in our model, we create a variable over here and we'll say public, and the variable's value is going to be application name, which will be Eureka News. Okay, so this is the name of the application which I have in my model. That is the header component.ts file which have this value in. And I want to use this value in my template. So what we do is we write this as a public property. Public is an optional keyword. If you don't write the public property like the public keyword, it's always going to be public. In the case of private, you have to define that it is a private value, but in the case of public, you don't have to. So any variable which you're creating over here, that will be directly public, or you can even write the public keyword in front of it. So this is a public value, and this public value will be available in my template. So over here, I will write this with curly braces and do data binding. So this is an example of one-way data binding, where we are sending a value from our model to our template. Okay, so we have curly braces. In the curly braces, I've written the name of the public property which I want to access. One important thing is it can only access properties from the same model file. So any model file which is created for header, that is only going to be accessible in the header component of HTML. It cannot access directly anything from app or any other model file. It will only access it from the header file. Okay, and how is this link created? This is based on this template URL metadata which we have. So when you create a TS file, it has defined in it that which template will be used for it. So that's why they are both connected and they can interact between them. So the model and the view will interact. Okay, so it cannot, the view cannot go to any other model file. It will only connect to this file over here. Right, so that shows up the Ederica news over here, and we get this value as a property binding in our code. Okay, that's great. Now what I need to do is I need to also add some CSS styling to it. So in a component, every component has a CSS file attached to it. This file is specific for this component. So any style which I want to add to this component, I can write that in the CSS file which is added for this component over here. Now over here, I can write okay, so sorry, in my header component CSS file, I can write any CSS file code which is going to be relevant for the header. Okay, so I'm getting some messages. I'm getting error compiled with error problems X. Unexpected closing main tag. It won't happen. Okay, so what I will do is I will send you the HTML over here. So maybe the HTML structure is not correct for you. So I'll send this HTML structure. So please use this to run the code. Okay, so what we want to do is I want to use some CSS for this component. So I'll go to the header CSS file and start writing some CSS which I want to use. So I want to have a CSS for the H1 over here. So I can write H1, and what CSS I want to implement on it. So I want the color of this H1 to be a specific color. So I can just pick some color name, or I can write a color code like a hexadecimal or a RGB color code over here. Okay, so now if I show you this page, it shows H1 in this specific color which I picked. All right, so that looks good. Now I also want to add some color for the header background. So the header right now is in plain white. I want to add some specific color to it. So let's see how that can be also done. So what we do is in Angular CSS, like when we are writing CSS using Angular, we will write a special identifier. So there is an identifier over here which is called as host. So this is not available in CSS. This is available in Angular only in this Angular CSS code. And this host means the Angular component, the header component which I have, it writes the direct CSS to that element. Okay, so over here I will write background color, and what background color I have to pick for it. So I can pick any of these colors and use that. Now when I look at the code, It should add that background color. Okay, so it's quite light. So let's pick some other color, and it should add that over here. It's not picking that value. Why? Okay, let's do one thing. Let's try out some other style over here. Let's say color is going to be, or the font size is going to be something like this. Okay, so let's head over. Okay, yeah, it's picking these values, but it's not showing them over here. So the reason is why this header color is not being added. So you see over here, I can see the Edureka header has a color which is background color aquamarine and font size which is 100. So I'm fine with font size not being added because font size is actually controlled by the H1 component, but this background color is not also being shown. The reason is the header component which I've created, that's a custom element, and the browser does not know how to render this custom element on the screen. So there is a concept of block elements and inline elements. So somehow the browser doesn't knows what kind of element it is and doesn't work. So what we need to do is we'll tell the browser that it is actually a block level element and it will create a block. So this is a small thing which we generally have to do for custom elements when we are creating them. So over here, I'll just say this is a block level element and add this background color to this. Okay, so this adds the background color to my header component, and the H1 component or the H1 tag inside it also has a color. I can add some more CSS styling to it. I can say I need some padding, and that will add some padding to it. In the H1, I will say it will have a font size, a little smaller font size, something like 14 for this. 14 is quite small. We'll set to 24. I think 24 looks better. Yeah, 24 is better. And we have this header all configured. Okay, so I got a question. Did you understand what is the host tag? The host is a special selector which is available in Angular only. It's not from CSS. The host means the Angular component which you have created. See, when you create a structure, you in the component you create H1 tag and all the tags in it. So if you want to write CSS for the H1 tag, you can directly write H1 and write the specific CSS for it. But what if I want to write the CSS for the component over here? This Edureka header, how will I add the CSS for the specific element? And that will be done using the host selector over here. So this is a special one which adds the CSS directly to the component which is created. So any CSS which you add for the host, that will go to the component on which the CSS which is getting created over here. So host means the component tag. Okay, so I'll send you the CSS. Try this out. Okay, so I got a message. Can you explain what is display block? So in HTML, when we create elements, there are two types of elements which are created, block elements and inline elements. Inline elements are elements which will not have, they will not consume any, they will not show you any background based on the they will only show you the background of the content, how they are placed in. So there are specific rules for them. So block elements are the ones which actually consume the whole browser width and available width and show the background color or margin and padding properties. So by default, when any custom element is created, it is created as an inline element. So the browser does not know that do I need to show the background properties or the padding or the margin properties for that. So you have to override it and you have to tell that, okay, this new custom element which I've created, that is the component name, has to be a block element, and it should use the margin, padding, and background properties on it. So that's the box model, how it works. Yes. So whenever you're creating a custom element, you have to add the display block for it. So that's a normal thing which you have to do with any custom elements when you're creating them. But you only need to add the display block if you're using the component as the host for CSS, and that actually uses any background properties. In some cases, you may create some components which do not use any background properties. Then you don't have to do display block for them. If you're using any box properties like background color, background image, display padding, or margin paddings, these kind of properties, then you have to only add the display block. Okay, so I will just recap again. So the application name is defined in the TS code over here. I will send it in the chat, and I will send this CSS also. So what I will do is one thing. I have configured a Git repository for this. So I will give you the code for the Git, like the URL for the Git repository. You can check this whole code over there also. Okay, so if you go to this repository, you will find all the code. I'll show you the content over here also. So this is a repository. If you want to check what code changes I've done, so you can go to commits and see what changes I did for that particular code. So till now, I've added the Bootstrap CSS, created the components, and if you miss out any code, you can refer it from here also. So I've sent you the link. So it's very hard to send you all the code in the chat. So this is much better. I will commit all the code once I made some changes, and you can copy it from here. So keep this repository handy with you. I will be committing the code on this repository. Okay, so till now we have configured our component, the header component, with some CSS styles and a property which is called as application name in it, and we are using that property in our header component.html. So that is done using the curly braces syntax. So we have to wrap the property name with the curly braces, and that property will automatically be binded with the TS file. Okay, any questions on this? So I got this question earlier, that why do we have URL styles as an array and template as one single file over here? The reason is there can be some global CSS which you want to use. So let's say what you did is you created a global CSS file over here, and you call it as text.css. All the text rules which you want to implement over here. You said that, okay, the h1 tag should be color red, and it should have font size of 24, like this. Okay, so this can be a global code which you have, and you want to add this global CSS into your component. So you can add two different CSS files or n number of CSS files like this. So that's why we have this as an array. So in this case, if I want to use that CSS, I'll go 2 lines up, and over here I will write I want to use the text.css. Okay, it will load the text.css also in my code and shows the color to be in red color for the text. So where is this coming from? This is coming from this file. So the order is also important. So the way you have defined the order of these files, the way they will be loaded also. Okay, so in my case, see, the header CSS is having a color which is carrot blue, but the color which is shown over here is red. And the order actually also is very important. So if I load the code over here for the text.css in this order, so it will load the code for the text.css, and that code will be overwritten by the header component.css. So ideally, any global CSS which you have should be loaded first, and then the component CSS should override your global CSS. Now in this case, the color will be in carrot blue. So I can say uh, in my CSS for the HTML, sorry, the H1 tag, the H1 tag will not have any font size defined over here. It will only have the color of the text. So I want the color of the text to be blue, and the font size will come from the parent file. So it will come from the text file. So over here, H1 says it will have the color from H1 file, and the font size will come from the text file which we have. This way you can create overrides like this. Okay, so try this out, then we'll continue. I will commit this code. Okay, so I got a question. That we have a template and template URL. So I was actually coming to that only. So in this file, you will see the metadata says there is a template URL. If you comment this, it will also give you option for template and template URL. So there are two options which are available, template and template URL. So template means if you want to write an inline template directly in this file. So in some cases, people, if you have a very small component code, or you want to prefer that everything for my component is in one single file, you can use it as template, and you can write a string template over here. So I can write h1 over here, directly like this, and write the property binding which I want to do. So I want to add the application name over here. So this will be a direct code of the template directly written in my file. It will work the same way. It just the file, the template is directly over here. This is good if you have a very simple structure. This will be fine. But if you have a huge component template, then I will not recommend this, because this makes my code more unmanageable, because I have the template, a huge HTML structure in my code, and the logic also in it, which gets quite complex. Like you may have to go through like hundreds of lines of template and hundreds of lines of code written in TS to work with it. So it's better that you split that into two different sections by implementing a template URL. Okay, so this way you can add a template. Now for a template, if you're writing the template like this, it's better that you use backtext, because the double quotes do not allow you to write multi-line strings. So if I try to write a multi-line string like this, it will give me an error that a multi-line string is not supported in JavaScript. In JavaScript, there is a different way of writing strings, which is called as backtext. So you write backtext and write the template inside them, and they will be allowed as multi-line. So I can write, like I can say multi-line over here. It works perfectly, and I can write a multi-line template in my code also now. So you can see it allows you to handle this. Okay, so this way you can use multi-line templates in your code. Okay, you can see the code demo on the Git also. If you need, I can send you this code. For me right now, I will just revert it back to the template URL. I prefer to have the different template file on which I can work with. Okay, any questions on this? Somnath, what is the error you're getting? So Somnath, have you updated the CSS? Like this is the CSS code which you have. I've sent you the chat. Please pick that from the chat and see if it works or not. Okay, so for Bootstrap to load in your project, I got a message that it's not working. So to Bootstrap to load in your project, you have to update the styles section in your Angular JSON file. So have you added that? Just check. This is also in the Git repository. See if it is like this only. Okay, can you do a screen share?
Yeah, I've added this styles.
No.
Hello.
Yeah.
I've added styles. It's not
Did you
getting
install
loaded.
Bootstrap?
It's showing that.
No, did you install Bootstrap?
Yeah, I've installed.
Okay, so try one thing. Restart the project again. Stop this project and restart again. Okay, go to your browser now. Refresh.
Yeah, it's working now.
Yeah, now it's working. So when you add anything to the
Yeah.
JSON file, Angular JSON file, you actually have to restart it. So then only it gets picked up. Otherwise, it will not pick those changes.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. So it's working.
Mm.
All right. Anyone else
Yeah.
has any issues? I will take back the control. Please mute yourself after this. Okay. So anyone else having any issues with it? Yes, Chetna. I will send you a request for screen share. Let's see. Senthil, is your code working? Yes, Chetna.
Yeah, I've shared the screen and I've added the made the relevant changes here also. So, but I'm not getting whether that Bootstrap have been installed. Whereas in the command
So,
prompt, it is showing me as installed. It has been installed.
yeah, that's fine. So you have to restart the project again.
I did that. Okay, I'll do it again.
Go to command prompt.
Yes.
The other one, the other command prompt which you have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stop this. Control C. Press Control C.
Yes.
And then restart it again. npm start again. Okay, wait for it to restart. Okay, I think it started. So can you go to the browser and refresh again? It's still lagging time. So wait for a minute. I think it will. Yeah, the server is not started yet. So once it starts, I think you will start seeing your changes. Now go to command prompt. Is the server started? No, it's now starting it.
Yes, it's getting started now.
It's fine. Yeah, it should load your changes after this.
Oh, okay, Praveen, thank you.
Cool. Welcome. Yeah, so yes, Somnath, I will send you the request. 1 second. Somnath, now you're the presenter. No, I've sent you the request, Somnath. Okay, once again. Okay, now sent you again. Yep.
Is my screen is visible?
Yeah, I can see.
Actually, I'm getting this one whenever I have added this part text.css.
Mhm.
So whenever
Camera is
I'm
on.
refreshing the
Guys, be careful. The camera gets on sometimes. So when you are sharing a screen or there is a button next to it to turn on the camera, so just be careful about that. Yep.
so am
Okay,
I
so
audible?
yeah, I can see the error. So did you create this text.css file?
No. I have just copy
So
paste that
yeah,
this
so
part
that's
from the
the problem.
GitHub.
So in my case, I created the CSS file and showed that
Okay,
code over
okay.
there. Yeah. So you have to create the
So
CSS
where
file
I
directly in the SRC folder.
in the search here new file like this
So
I
I
have to
can't see
create.
that. No, I can't see that actually happening on your screen. Yes. So
I
just in
think
the SRC
screen.
folder now, directly create the file.
So is my screen is visible or freezed?
Now, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, create a file over here directly.
New file, na?
Yeah, new file.
Yes. Okay, and now I have to copy paste that one. Na?
Yes. Okay. So now your error should be gone and it should work.
Okay. What does the main font size to 24 pixel means from everywhere? All sides it will take 24 pixel. Na?
That is font size. So font size means the
Okay,
font
font
size
size.
of the,
Oh, okay. Font size.
yeah,
Okay,
the
I
H1
got
will
it.
be 24 pixel in font size.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, so I got a question. Can you explain from Jayesh? Can you explain the multi-line feature again? Yeah, 1 second. Give me a minute. All right, I will share my screen. And the multi-line feature is actually when you create an inline template like this, you can just write template, and the template has to be a string. Now in JavaScript, like before ES6 or before ES6, the JavaScript string can be only created by double quotes or single quotes. So you can write a template like this. Just I'm writing some junk characters, but yeah, you can write a long template in one single line. And the moment you write it into multiple lines, the code will start giving you error because the multi-line strings are not supported in JavaScript. And the solution to this was implementing backticks. So it's a different syntax for creating strings using backticks. When you create a string with backticks, that string can be implemented as multiple lines in the code. So you can say, okay, my template is going to be like a huge template which I'm going to create directly in the code in multiple lines like this. So it will be a multi-line string. So that's what, and it's implemented using backticks. So you can see the code in the GitHub. What is a backtick? Backtick is the symbol which is left of the one key. So on the top number row, the key which is left side of the number one, that is your backtick, and you can use it for creating multi-line strings in JavaScript now. Okay, so I will just run. Okay, Jayesh, is it clear? Cool, great. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's take a small break. Let's take a break for 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll see the other types of directives which are available. So we haven't worked with directives. Now we're going to start with implementing directives in our code. Okay, so let's join back after 10 minutes. I'll start the timer on the screen. So we have got our header set up. So we are quite late also, like it should be quite easy to set it up, but okay, so we're taking some time on it. Once these changes are done, now, sorry, 1 second, I'll just discard the changes. And we have this header working. Okay, so the next thing would be, I need to implement the navigation. So in the navigation, we know that there are going to be links in it. So we need 4 links or 4 or 5 links in it, which we have to create. Now, how do we implement this? So a way would be that, okay, I will go to the navigation component over here and say I need to create 4 links in it and structure that. So I will write a UL, I'll create a listing. Okay, and I will create links in it. But the navigation is something which will be dynamic. It will be depending on what type of user is logged in, which country the user is logged in. So it can be dynamic information, and we can have some logic to remove some navigation links in some scenarios and add some navigation links in some scenarios. So it has to be a dynamic. So I cannot hard code this over here that it will be always 5 different links which I want to show. So how to make this dynamic? So what I can do is, first I will say I have one single record which I want to show. And does it shows properly on our screen? Yes, it shows properly on our screen. And what about 2 records in it? Okay, will they work? Yeah, so they are working. So what I need to do is, I need to repeat this based on some logic. Let's assume that I have an array. I will create an array in my environment config file. So if you go to the src folder, there's a environments config which gives you the configuration for different environments which we are going to run our application. So the first one is your prod, that is for production environments. The second one is for your development environments. So in this environment config, I want to define that what links I want to use on my production and also on my development environment. So I'll write export navigation, what navigation I want to implement, equal to array. And in this, we're going to write the objects which we need to support the navigation for, or the name of navigation links which I want to support for. So I have 5 navigation items. So I will add 5 objects. In this, each object, I will add a name for the record. So I'll write this will be for home page. Second will be for name. What's the second name? That is sports, health, politics, and international. So write sports over here. And just copy the base template. We'll say politics, health, and international. Okay, so these are the 5 navigation links which I want to implement on a system. So these are for development, and I will also mention this in the production also, because I need the same navigation links in my production environment. So this is only for environment settings. So production and development in our case have the same configuration. Okay, but I can, if I want more links on the production, I can add more items over here. So for right now, just keep both of them as same. So this is the code which you have to add for the navigation links. Okay, so these are the navigation links which we have. I will go to my navigation component now. I'll go to components, navigation. In the TS file, I have to use this. So what we'll do is we'll write import from, move 3 levels up, because the file is actually in the src folder. So I have to write move 3 levels up and say in the environments, I want to use the code which is coming from the environments/environment file. Okay, and from this, I want to use the navigation data. Right, so this property or this will be imported. So the navigation data will be imported into my component file. Now, if I run this, this will be just an array of 5 records. Okay, so I got a question: why will be add it in the environment component only? So I don't want to keep it in the component file because it's something which may be dependent on what environment I'm using. Maybe different countries have different navigation, so it's better to have this outside of your component, so you can control it using the environment file instead of hard coding everything in your component file. Okay, so we have this data for navigation over here. Now I want to create this navigation. I want to create the data. Okay, so Somnath, the 3/ over here, this is how you navigate between your folders. So 3 dots or 3 slashes over here means I'm going 3 levels up. So Somnath, please go through the basics of how the commands work, like in your command prompt, or how files are picked up in your command prompt, because this will help you out understand these things. I hope this is everybody is clear with this. These are the basics how a system works. Okay, so yeah, you will be getting an error. Yes, navigation is declared but never been used. Yeah, that's a problem. That's an error. Just don't worry about it right now. You will get this error in the terminal or in your editor only over here. That's not a problem right now. We'll fix this up. So I have this navigation over here. I want to use this in my component. So anything which you're importing over here is not available directly to your component. You have to assign it as a public property of your component. So what you do is over here, I will create a property, a public property over here. I can write public keyword, or I can just write the property name. So I can just write public, and I can write public navigation equal to navigation which we are getting over here. Okay, so what I'm doing is the navigation which I'm importing from the environments, I'm assigning that to a public property of my component. And now that will be available in my template. So if I write curly brackets over here, and I can see I will get navigation over here. If I write this and run the code on my browser, you will see it prints out object over here, because it's an array and each item in the array is an object. So what it does is it does a toString. Like on an object, there is a property called as toString. So whatever the toString returns, it prints that value over here. So this is not what we expect from it. So I want to create a HTML structure with it. So what we do is we use this data from the array and give it to the Angular template to repeat a particular section on our page. So what I want to do is I want to repeat this li 5 times, or number of times how many times the navigation array is having items in it. So we know the navigation is an array. So what I will do is I will write a special instruction that is called as a directive. So it's an instruction which tells Angular to do something with our element. So this li element has to be repeated based on number of items we have in the navigation array. So we'll write star navigation, ng. Ng means Angular. So I want to use Angular for. It's a for loop. And in this for loop, I want to say let link of navigation. So link of navigation means link is one single record and navigation is the whole array. So you can write let item of array. So that's the meaning of this. So it means like you're writing let item of array, the array which you have. So item means one single item, of is just operator, and what array you want to get the item from. So that's the array which we have. So navigation is an array for us. So one item is here, and based on how many items you have in the navigation, this li will repeat. Okay, so I got a message. What is the shortcut for commenting the code on Mac? So let me just check what is it. So let's write. So you write comment, whatever text you have, you press command and slash. So the shortcut for that would be on a Mac, it would be command plus the slash key, or control plus slash on a Windows system. Okay. You can actually go to the shortcuts. There is a cheat sheet for shortcuts. You can use that. So this is a link for that. Also for Mac, I will give you. This is for Windows, the first one. This is the second one is for the Mac. So this will give you all the shortcuts in it. Okay, so I've created the navigation link. Now let's go to the screen and we can see it prints out home 5 times over here. Because the navigation array which we have created in environments, it has 5 items in it. So the link, the li has been added over here on the screen 5 times. So this is how we repeat some template in our HTML. So this is how Angular for or ng for is used. Okay, it's called as a directive. How do we know it's a directive? Because it has an asterisk in front of it. So anything which has asterisk in front of it is going to be a structural directive in Angular. So it's a structural directive which repeats items in an array. Okay. Now, I know the information of one single item also based on the link. So what I can do over here is I can write expression. We can call it as a string interpolation. We can call it as a JavaScript expression in this, or we can call it as data binding. In this data binding, I will write link dot what value it has. So the array which we have created, it has object. So this is one single record, and the object has a property in it which is called as name. So I can write link dot name over here, and that will pick the name property value and prints over here. Now when I go to the screen, you will see it prints out home, sports, politics, health, and international. So it prints out 5 links based on, or 5 different text based on the array which I have. Okay, so this way we can use ng-for to repeat some items on the screen and customize those each item by writing the property. All right, so you can try this code. I will make few changes into it. So we need also some custom CSS for this, because right now it's not written in our one single line, it is written in multiple lines. So what we do is we write some CSS for it. So I will say the UL is going to have a display property which is called as flex, and the flex direction is going to be row. And now the 5 items are going to be in one single row. They have dots in them, so we'll remove those dots. We'll say list style is going to be none. So the dots are gone, and there is a small margin on the side of the UL which is over here. We have to remove that. So we'll say margin on the UL is going to be 0. So it will have no zero. It will have 0 margin, and also padding also has to be removed for this. So we'll say padding has to be 0. So the changes which I'm doing, these are not special to Angular. These are basic things which we do for creating a layout with ULI. Okay, so that's the list. Now the items are all tied up together, so there is no space between them. So what we'll do is we'll say in the UL you have LIs in it, and we'll add some margin to the LIs also. So I'll give 10 pixel or 5 pixel. I think 5 pixel margin is fine. So I will give the margin only on the left and right. I will not give the margin on the top and bottom. So I will write 0. 0 means top and bottom, and 5 over here means left and right. So on this, it has margin over here from left and right. So that's the margin which has been added. Now I also need to customize the background color for this. So I will customize the background color on the host. We'll say host background color would be some color like this. We'll say this, and the host is the component, the custom element. It has to be also assigned as display block, and I will add some styling to it also. So just a padding. Let's give some padding of 10 pixel, and it has now been a little bit spaced out. Okay, so this looks good, and we have created a component which uses ng-for creating this list of items from the array and show that detail on the screen. Okay, so as you can see, these are 5 repeated items which are added, and we added some CSS style to it which is related to this component only. Okay, any questions on this? Yeah, so I will do one thing. I will send you the CSS and commit this whole code in the GitHub also. Okay, so we have the basic listing running. Now we have to create the gallery. So for the gallery, actually I was supposed to use the ng bootstrap, which didn't work properly for us. We'll implement the gallery later on. So for the gallery, I will do one thing. I will just create a placeholder area for it. So write host. In this host, we'll say some background color over here. So let's use this color, and we'll give a height to it. So height would be something around 300 px, and width is going to be 100%. And we're going to say display block for this. So in the gallery component, go to the CSS of it and add the CSS. This will show the gallery like this. So we are not making any changes for the gallery component right now. We just add it like this. So I'll commit this also, changes for gallery component CSS. Okay, so the page should look like this. Now we're coming to the article callout over here. So we have to put some data for the article callout and create these callouts. So these are 4 callouts which are being added, and they are added in our app component HTML. You can see they are added over here. So one thing is kind of a problem for me when I see this code. The thing is, I'm repeating them in my application component, and these are actually one single element. One second. Okay, so first thing would be instead of repeating them in the application component, what I will do is I will create a new component and add that component, these callout components in that. So I'm just going to create a new component. So I will start a new terminal, and over here I will say nggc. In the components folder, I will create article callouts, not single callout, but callouts. Okay, so this will be a component which has multiple components inside it. Okay, we'll create this component. I will give you the command for creating it. Okay, that's created over here. Now what I will do is I will remove the article callout section from here, this section from here, and move this into my article callouts component. So I will take this row from here, remove this, and move this inside the article callouts component HTML like this. Okay, so that's the CSS file, this one. Okay, like this. Okay, and I will use this article callouts component in my app over here. You go to the app component, and over here I will place this component like this. Okay, so what I did is I nested out, I created another level of hierarchy. So I have callouts. In the callouts, I have one single item as a component inside it. Okay, so this is a best practice that instead of writing everything into one single component and making everything more complicated, we should break our code into smaller components too. So in this case, I have this article callouts component, and this uses one single item in it, which is the article callout. So if you go to this, you will have this article callout component also used in it. And I will remove this from here. I only need one of it. Okay, because I want to repeat these in the page. So here I will say this is going to be Based on an array, I want to repeat them. But do I have an array right now? I don't have an array. So what I will do is, I will go to my articles callout component. So see this different component which I have. I will go to this component and I will hard code some data over here. Okay. So let me get some data which I want to hard code over here. Give me a minute. Okay, so I have the data. So I will just hard code the data directly into this file and I will call it as top news and add this whole hard coded data in the TS file over here. Okay, so I get error. Why I am getting this error over here? What is happening? Some kind of strange. Okay, this should work. Oh yeah, yeah, I got the error. Yes. Okay, it's an array of records. So I'll just put it like this. Okay, so yeah, I have an array which has 4 items in it. These are the top news. So this is just a mock data I have created, and these are the top news which I have. Okay, so these are, and I will add that to my component. So I will write into my component over here. In the article callouts component, I will add it as a property. So here, I will create a public variable, public, and the property for this would be news, which is going to be equal to top news. Okay, so these are the top news in my system, and these are 4 records which I have. So in this callout section over here, I can repeat this section 4 times based on the array which I have. So how do we do that? So we'll just write the same check ng for let news of news. Okay, that will be quite confusing. So we'll say item of news, and the news is actually coming equal to the top news over here, and the top news is an array of 4 news items which I have. Okay, so that's the public property and the news property. I'm using that in my template over here, and this will repeat this section 4 times. Okay, got error over here. So it says article row. What is this error? It says unknown word. What is unknown word over here? ng4 let of news. Yeah, now it's working. Okay, maybe the code was still compiling. So it happens sometimes the code doesn't get compiled easily. It takes some time. Okay, so I have these 4 articles printed over here, and it works perfectly fine. Now, each of this article will have some information written in it. So let's go to the article callout component, the single article, and write some HTML layout for it. So what do I want to show in it? So I will create it with a div tag. In the div tag, I will use a h4 tag for the heading. Okay. Then I want to show some content about it, some article details. So I'll write this over here, the article content. Then we'll write another p tag, which will be for who is the author of it. So write author name. Okay, like this. Okay, so this is how each of the article section will be shown on the screen. We'll add some CSS to it also. So what we'll do is we'll write host. On the host, we'll write border 1 pixel solid red, or like, but let's pick a better color. Let's pick 1 pixel solid blue or violet, some random color. It's fine. Yeah, it shows the borders over here, but little bad. So we'll just add some display property to it, display block, and it should work perfectly fine. Okay, that fixes the problem. We'll add some padding to it also, so that the text gets aligned inside of it. Yep, looks good. We'll also add some border radius also. So just to have some rounded corners, that looks a little better. So we'll say 10 px. So that will add the rounded corners to each of the element. Okay, looks good. Now these are repeated on the screen. Now I need to get the data for them. So in the previous example, when I was implementing the navigation, it was very simple because the data was coming from the navigation variable. It was directly available in the template. So we just wrote link of navigation, and we just wrote the template binding directly in the template saying, okay, yep, we have the link over here, print the link, and that works. But in this scenario, the code is a little different. The main difference is the data comes from the article callouts component, which has the list of articles, and it iterates that list like this. Okay, and this data has to be used by a different component. So I have to pass this data to a new component which will use it. So which component has to use this? The article callout component. So the single item has to receive this data and show this content. So in this case, this is a scenario of a property binding, where I have a property and I want to bind that with my component. So this is done for elements in HTML elements also, and for components. If you're creating a custom component in Angular, you also can pass some properties. So we do that by saying a square bracket. In the square bracket, we write the name of the property. So I want to write the name of the property as the article which we have. So I write it as article. Okay, and we'll assign it to the value of it. So what is the value of this article? That is the item. Okay, so the name of the property, the value of the property. Okay, and it gives me an error that cannot bind article since it's not a known property of the Edureka article callout. So it doesn't know that does this actually support. So this component does not support this property right now. So we have to add a support for it. So by default, this is not supported. So what we do is we go to the single item, this callout component, and over here we are going to use a special directive which is called as input. So write input, and in the class I'll write @input. So this is a decorator, and we write input. So this decorator has an optional metadata, so we don't need to pass that metadata, but we need to pass the name of the property which I want to receive. So what is the name of the property I want to receive? So in this file, what is the name of the property I am receiving in the component? Guys, what's the answer for this? Yep, it's the article. So this is the name of the property. Anything which is in square brackets, that's the property, and this is the value of that property. Okay. So in this case, over here, I will write article like this. Okay, and it will give me an error that the member article is implicitly has an any type. So this means because we are writing the code in TypeScript and I'm creating a property over here and there is no defined type for it. So if you're not defining any type for it, it will be automatically assigned as any. And in our TypeScript code, we have a check that anything which we are creating, any property which we are creating, it cannot be automatically assigned to any. So that is defined in our TS config over here. So somewhere over TS config, there should be any rule which must be defined. Okay, or maybe it's a default proper check over here, but yeah, it's a rule which has been implemented over here that any property which you are creating, it should not have a automatically assigned type of any. So I have to create a custom type for it and assign the article property over here. So a new custom type has to be defined. So there are two solutions to this. I can say, no, I know that I want to assign it as any. I can forcefully tell it, don't worry, I will just assign it as any. Okay, that's a valid solution. But I will say this is just a very bad workaround, because if you are implementing TypeScript code and you're defining properties as any, then what's the use of TypeScript? Then that you're not creating special types for the data. So what you should do is you should create a new custom type for it. And a custom type can be created by using a interface. So here, I'm going to create a new file in the, actually I will create a new file in the src folder. And I will create a folder which is called as interfaces. In that interfaces folder, I will create a new file, call it as article.ts. And I'm going to create a custom data type. So over here, I'll write interface. So this is not a type, it's an interface. So it's kind of a blueprint for a class or a variable. So I will say this is an interface for article. And what does my article support? So if I create one article, what properties does my article have? And that we can get from this data over here. So the data which I've hard coded, that gives me the idea that what properties will it have. So I can, I can take one record, take it to the interface and replace it over here. Okay, so this is not a valid value. Now I will see that what values I am assigning in it. So ID, what is ID? ID is an ID, but it is a form of a string. So I'll replace it with string over here. Okay, what is this? This is also, the second value is also string. So I'll replace this and say this is going to be string. This is also a string. Okay, so string. This is also string, string, and string. This is a number. So we'll write number. This is also a string, string. This is a Boolean. So we'll write this as Boolean. And this is also a string. So this creates a one single data type. So one single record will look like this. So which will have all these properties in it, keys in it, and their data types defined over here. Now I will use this as my data type for the article. So when I'm receiving it over here in the article callout, instead of any, I will say it's going to be a type of article, and we're going to import this from the interface folder. So I'll just go 2 levels up, interfaces/article. So it gives the error because I haven't exported this. So I write export interface, and the name of the interface is article. Okay, so we'll write import article, and now that has been defined over here. And now it again starts giving an error. So what is the second error? Okay, so now the second error is that it says that the article has no initialized value and definitely not is not assigned in the constructor. So what we're doing is we are creating a property which is called as article, and it is typed as an article interface. Now it does not have any assigned value to it. So this is a check that you're not creating properties which do not have any value to them. So I know this value is going to come in the future. I don't have this value right now, so I cannot have some default value for it. I will receive this value sometime in the future. So over here, we are going to write a exclamation mark. So that means, don't worry, this value is going to be received in the future and we are going to use that. Okay, so just write exclamation mark. If you know some default value for it, what you can do is you can just start writing the default value like this. So you can write the variable is this, type of this is this, and what is the default value. So in that case, you have to pass all the values in it, like what are the default values you want to set for it. But I don't have any default value, so I can just remove this object and I will say exclamation. That means the default value or is not available and the actual value will come in the future. So write article like this. Okay, so when I write input article over here, so this means it's also going to create a public property which is called as article. Okay, I'll just keep some comments on it. Okay, so we are already having our article property created. Now, if it is a public property, what we can do is we can go to the HTML and start replacing the items over here. So if I write article, I can get the title of the article. So I'll write title. Next one would be article dot content, and then we'll say article dot author. Now on the author, then I have a nested property in it that it will be named like this. Now when I run this code, you will see it prints out the article name, the title of it, the content of it, and the author details, like who is the author of this article. Okay, I can also add a few other things, like I can create an image tag over here. In the data, when I have the data coming from the API, it has the image URL also, like the articles, the author's avatar. So over here, it also knows that what is the profile pic for the author. Okay, so that also comes over here. So I can write in the template that print out the article dot author dot profile pic in it. Okay, that's the URL which you're going to pass, and you will see it also prints the profile image. Like these are all random data, so it just prints out some profile images. And we can customize this also. So we can write in the CSS that if you have an image tag in it, the image tag will have the maximum width of 30 pixel, height of 30 pixel, and a border radius. So it's going to make that image in a round circle. So just set a round border radius of 15. Okay, so in this case, if you want to create a full circle, your height and width should be same, and the border radius should be half of what is your height and width. So if your height and width is 30, then the border radius should be 50 because it's a radius. So now in this case, it creates these circles over here, and we have the profile images also loaded. Okay, one thing is a problem, like all of them have different heights. So I can just hard code a height for them. So their height will be always limited to I'd say 250 pixel. I think that would be fine. Yeah, 250 pixel is good enough. And we have the articles listed like this. Okay. And that's our callouts and the CSS and HTML all implemented over here. So what we learned in this example. So let's recap again. So what we have covered and learned in this scenario. So what we have learned is that if you're creating a list of items, do not create like a loop directly in the code. You should create a listing component. In the listing component, you should create a single item component also. So what is our listing component? That is our articles callout. The articles callout has all the data in it that what you want to repeat, okay, in an array. Then we are assigning that data to a public property of our component. In the template, what we're doing is we are creating a loop, and instead of directly rendering the component over here, we are creating another component, which is the one single item over here. And in that single item, we are passing a property called as article, and the value of that is that one single item which we are receiving from the array. Okay, now we go to the single item component. We have to import or use that property in our code. That will be done by input. We'll receive that, and once we receive the property, it's going to be automatically created as a public property. So this this property which we're receiving as article will also be available in our component template file, and we can start using the values from it in our code, in our HTML. And whenever we are receiving a property, we should always create a interface for it or a data type for it, that what type of property it is and what are the relevant keys or values we are going to receive in it. All right. Any questions on this? Okay, so got a few questions. So first question is, what is input? Input is a way of receiving a property from parent component to the child component. So right now, the parent component is the callouts component, and the child is the single callout component over here. So there are two components which are here. So if you are sending data from your parent to the child, then you have to create an input, and that will receive the property. Okay, so to receive that property, we have to define that what properties are going to be received. So properties are not going to be automatically available in your component, in your child component. You have to tell Angular that I need to receive a property which is called as article, and the type of that is also going to be article. So that's why you have to use the input decorator to tell Angular that a property will be received from parent to child. Okay, so got another question. Why do we need to create this kind of a flow? Otherwise, we were also able to see these without creating the 4 article components. Yeah, so the reason is I want to split the code into smaller chunks. So instead of keeping the data logic in one single component and writing the template and interacting all the logic of that single item in that same one single component, it's better to divide the code into smaller parts because it's more manageable. And if you find some error, like if there is some error in the testing or some logic is not implemented properly, you can pinpoint to a special single component that, okay, this particular thing is not working, and I will fix the errors in that case. Otherwise, if everything is in one single component, then it will be a big problem. Okay, so okay, I got another question. Without writing the article callout, we have been seeing the 4 articles. Yes. Okay, I think this is the again follow for that. Yeah. So without writing the article property, if I just remove the article from here, this will still work. Okay, but what will you see over here? You will see blank boxes because the data is in the parent component and you have to pass it to the child component. So that's why we have to create this property. Otherwise, the components will be repeated, but they will not have any data to show in them. So we are passing it as a property that, okay, your child component, and I will give you this property which is coming from the parent. So that's why we have to pass that property, because the data is available on the parent component level, not at the child component level. So this will only repeat them, but will not pass the data to them. So to pass the relevant data to them, we have to write a property which will tell the component that, okay, this is what you have to show in the component. Okay, now then only you can see these 4 records. Okay, I will commit this code, and you can pick this from the GitHub if you want to get the code for it. Okay, so any questions? So I'll start sending you the code in the chat also. So this is the code which I'm sending you is for articles callout component TS file. Okay, so I got a few questions. What is the need of interface? They didn't understand. So interface is for creating a blueprint of a variable. So there are 2 concepts in TypeScript, creating a type or an interface. So interface can be used as a data type also. Okay, so it's a blueprint of what kind of data you're receiving. So in TypeScript, you have to, whenever you're receiving a property or whenever you're creating a variable, the best practice is to always define a data type for it or an interface for it. So in my case, when I'm receiving something as a property, it's required that I define a data type for it. So that was the thing I'm doing over here. Okay, in other places also you can, you are also required to define the types for it. But the other places where I created the data was quite simple. So it was just a primary data type, like a string or a number or a boolean. So in that case, the Angular code will automatically understand when I'm defining the value. But when I'm passing it as a property, the Angular code does not have a link with it, that what kind of a property is being passed into the code. See, a property means when you define any property at a component level, over here, you are actually breaking the logic into 2 different sections. So you're breaking the code into one parent component and one child component. And now to couple them, like to join them, you have to pass a property, and you have to know that what properties are actually supported, like what kind of a property is supported. What if the developer just wrote something like this, false? Okay, now the TypeScript code gives me an error that the type boolean is not assignable to type article over here. This is the main thing why we need this kind of a property binding. Otherwise, if I run this code, I will save this and I will get an error when I'm going to see on the screen that, okay, I did something wrong. I am not supposed to write article is equal to false. That's the wrong data type I'm assigning. So what Angular and TypeScript does over here, it does a static type checking for you. So whatever properties you're defining, if you are defining any wrong data type for them, it will immediately show you an error that, hey, you are writing something wrong and it's not valid. So fix this first and then the code will work. So that's why we have to define any property which we have with the interface or a data type for it. Okay, I hope this answers your question. Guys, no responses. Is it clear or not? Let me know. Okay, so I got a question. To work in real-time Angular project as a developer, you need to be very good with CSS Bootstrap. No, so I would say it depends on which type of project you have. Bootstrap is something which is very common with every developer, so that's why it's been picked over here. Different companies have their own design systems, and you should be good with that only. So I would say if you're good with CSS, if you can understand how CSS is written, you can work with Bootstrap or any other custom design system which your company will provide you. So if you are learning web development, just learn how CSS works, and everything else will be much easier for you then. Even for me, like I'm not expert in CSS, like in Bootstrap especially. I'm good with CSS, but I am not expert with Bootstrap. So whenever I need to build something, I will just look at the Bootstrap documentation and figure out how to implement that. But if I'm not good with CSS code, then I won't be able to understand the Bootstrap documentation and will not be able to comfortably make changes in it. So get your hold of CSS and everything else will be easy for you. Yep. Another solution or alternative for Bootstrap is Tailwind. Tailwind is also very good. In Angular, projects will use Material UI. So that is also one thing which you should learn if you, or at least understand what is Material UI if you are creating an Angular project, because that's something which is provided by Google. Android operating system uses it, and a lot of Angular projects are also designed towards Material UI or Bootstrap. Okay, so again a question, are you able to understand why this property is added and why do we have this interface? Great. Okay, so one thing I should have done also over here is when I'm writing this code, and in the array over here which is created in the callouts array, I should also have defined the property, sorry, the interface for this variable. So I should have written article like this. But now the article over here is actually going to be an array of multiple articles. So we'll write square bracket after it. That means it's an array, but each item in the array is going to be a article type. So this is the actual best practice, so that end to end your interface is defined or a data type is defined for a particular value in the code. Okay, so actually this is the right way. Now in my data, which I have created over here, the mock data, there is a property over here which is called as is top news, and every news of this over here is actually set to true. What I will do is I will set two of them as false and two of them as true. Okay, so now we have two records which are top news and we have two records which are not top news based on this flag. Now if a news is top news, I want to show a star in the article callout over here. So in this article callout, somewhere I want to show a star. Let's say on the title, I want to show a star that this is a top news. And if it is not a top news, the star should not be shown. So let's see how that can be done. So we have the article over here, and how do we add a star? So I'll just use an emoji. So I just use this emoji for star over here, and that will show up. But right now it's been shown up for all of them. But I only want to show this for the one item which has top news flag as true. So what we'll do is we'll wrap this with a span tag. So write span like this. And we're going to use a special directive which is called as ngIf. And in the ngIf, I will write article dot is top news. And if this value is true, then the star will be shown on the screen. If the value is false, the star will not be shown on the screen. So now we run this code. The first and the last are the top news, and the two in the middle are not top news and they are not shown up with the value. Okay, so this is a way of using ngIf. So if you have some conditional code that a conditional item has to be shown or removed from the screen, we can use the ngIf directive. Only if the condition is true, the element will be shown. Otherwise, the element will not be shown on the screen. Okay, so try this out. I'll send you the code in the chat, and then I will take answers. Oh, sorry, I will take questions after this. Let's take a break for 2 minutes, then we'll join back. Okay, so I think we have done the content for today. We have seen how we can use ngIf, ngFor, and we have used component structuring, where we can we have broken up the component code into smaller pieces and did some styling using Bootstrap. All right, so that's the content for today. So I got a few questions. How have you used emojis? So emojis are actually character codes, so you can use them like normal characters on your system. So if you have a Mac machine has a keyboard for it. Otherwise, you can just search for emojis on your web, and you can just copy paste any emoji code from here. So like, let's say I want to use this one. I just copy this and paste it into my code like this. So the code will directly support this. Okay. Next is where is Docker image come from? On Visual Studio Code Editor, there is a Docker image. In my code, nope, there is no Docker image. This is just an icon for managing the Docker instances, but we are not doing any Docker code right now. All right, so next question is, where do I get the class recordings? So the class recordings are available in the LMS. So just 1 second. So if you go to the LMS, let me show you the class recordings. So you'll get this kind of a screen, and in this you will get the class recording section. So this is the recording from the yesterday's class. Okay, so over here you will find the class recording. So after this session, another 2-3 hours, or by I think India time, in the morning India time, you will find the recording over here also of the next class recording, or in the course content also. For every module you will find the class recording which has been done. Okay, so you will find the class recordings. The code is actually on GitHub. So if you have the GitHub URL, you can get the code from there. It has all the commits mentioned in it, what changes I've done, and you will be able to find all those. So for this today's session, you will get an assignment. So there is an assignment code which you have to do. So what you have to do is you have to create a new Angular application. Okay, in that application, you have to create a component. In the component, remove all of the content in it and create a table like this. So just to create a table layout by using simple Bootstrap HTML, and I can give you the link for that too. 1 second. 1 second, give me a second over here. Tables. Yep, from here you can get the relevant code for creating a table, and you just need to show a table on the screen. You no need to have any kind of interactivity in it. Just create a table, and once the code has been done, like you have the table running inside the component, zip that project folder and upload that to the LMS. So you come to this page, like submit project over here. So how this works is, you don't need to submit the project with the node modules folder in it. See, I'm going to show you a demo of it. So when you are going to submit the project, you will have the project folder like this. This is the project folder. Select all the files except the node modules folder. Do not add the node modules folder. Okay, so select all the files, do not add the node modules, and create a zip from this. So on a Mac machine, you can just do a right click and compress,
On a Windows machine, you can right click and say send to a compressed folder or a compressed zip, and that will be created. This zip file has to be uploaded on the LMS. Over here, I'm uploading it for the demo code, but you will write the name of the assignment which you're doing, like module 1 assignment or module 2 assignment, and go to your LMS, say browse, and where is your project? Take that zip file and upload it from here. So for me, if I submit this, I think it will not allow me to submit because I am the organizer for this. But for you, it will submit this and show you that you have submitted a assignment. Okay, so I will also upload the code on the LMS if you don't have the access to Kit and you need the code. I will upload the code over here also. So this is the code, submit, and the code will be uploaded, and the code will be uploaded in the module 2. Show you here. 1 second. Okay, so in module 2, sorry. So you will find the code over here at the last. It is called as demo 2, 25th June. Okay, so that's the code which we have for today. Actually 26th today, but yeah, accidentally wrote 25th. So don't worry about it. It's 26th June. So the assignment, when you upload the assignment, it will go through a review process and you will get the feedback that the assignment is completed properly or there is some scope of improvement in it. So don't worry about it. Okay, so how do I log into LMS? So you will get an email from the Edureka team. You must have, before you joined this session, or even like when you were introduced to LMS, like to Edureka, you must have received an email from the team. And that will give you the details of how to access the Edureka platform. If you don't have that, you can raise a ticket or you can call Edureka and tell them that I don't have the credentials to log in into the LMS. And if you don't have the LMS credentials, please sort this out as soon as possible, because there is a quiz, there is a certification project which you have to also complete. All of this will be managed by the LMS portal. So please get that sorted out by calling Edureka or sending them an email and telling them that you don't have the access to it. All right, so any questions from from today's session? So we are over, like we have completed the topics, but if you have any questions, we can stay back for another 5 minutes and cover them. Okay, so how many days after you will get the review of your assignments? I have to check with the team. I don't have the specific timeline because it depends on how is the workload. Somebody has to go through them. So it depends on like in a couple of days, you should get that. So the last submission day for this particular assignment is 20th. So the process of submitting the assignment is go to the specific module, like you are going to upload the assignment for module 2. Go to module 2, click on assignment. You will see the assignment details. Complete the assignment, whatever is mentioned. Click on submit assignment. Select the file. So when you have to upload a zip file. So for creating the zip file, like select all the files in your project folder except the node modules. Because if you add the node modules in your zip file, the project will not be uploaded. It's going to be very huge. It will not upload. So select all the files except the node modules folder, and this zip file has to be uploaded over here. This will show you that okay, the code has been uploaded, and then you say submit, and that will submit your assignment. So for me, it will not work, but for you guys, it will work properly. Okay, any other questions? Okay, the code is uploaded on LMS. The code is also on GitHub. If you have any questions, let me know. I hope this session was helpful. You are able to understand how components are created, how properties are passed from components, and we have used the string interpolation or JavaScript expressions for data binding. And we have also seen how two directives are used, like the directive for ng-for and ngf are used in Angular. So the details for login, you would have received an email from Edureka that this is the credentials for LMS. If you haven't, you can check with Edureka. You can write an email to them on the support email address, or you can call Edureka team and ask them for the credentials for logging into the LMS. They will send you an email regarding it. Okay. Any other questions? Is it necessary to use Angular 14 version to complete the assignment? No. So if you are having a later, like older version of Angular, that's also fine. That won't be a problem. But let's not use any older version than two last versions. So if you are from Angular 12, 13, or 14, I think it will be fine. But do not use anything older than that. All right. So I think we can wrap up the session. So I hope you like the session, and please give your feedback. So yesterday I got a good amount of feedback, so I'm hoping for the same feedback to be given today. Like everybody gives the feedback after the session. So thank you, everyone.